9 past the hour. The sun has come up over Washington. And here with us now in New York, the founder of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed, back on the show. Good to have you back.
Good to be with
Ralph,
you.
let's sort this out. We got like a war of attrition. Republicans in October had one of the worst months ever. Their approval ratings dropped to 18% in a CBS poll, all-time low in Gallup, all-time low in NBC News, Wall Street Journal. And then you just wait long enough, we skid out of the way, and now the White House is having just a horrific time as well. What does the Republican Party do moving forward to avoid the mistakes of the last month or two?
Well, the first thing you do is when your opponent is in the process of committing suicide, you stay out of camera range. So right now, as the Obama administration is dealing with having to explain why the President of the United States told the American people serially and repeatedly that if you liked your policy, you could keep it, we now know that as early as July of 2009, the White House knew that was not the case. So you let that message burn in. But that's not enough. After that, you got to do three things. Number one, you got to say what you're for, not just what you're against.
Amen.
It's not enough to be against Obamacare. What's our plan?
Right.
Secondly, you have to have winsome candidates who are effective messengers, who can win people who even don't always agree with you on every issue.
Right.
You look at really good politicians, they get people to vote for them who don't necessarily agree with them on everything.
Can you imagine if the Tea Party group hadn't done all this shutdown stuff and they waited and let this play out? Can you imagine the position the party would be in right now? Wouldn't it be far better, far stronger, and just successful on every level? Because they just have this rollout story.
Yeah, I was not a big fan of the shutdown strategy, primarily because I was a veteran of the shutdown in the 90s.
We were there.
I was there. I was on Speaker Gingrich's advisory group, outside advisory group. I was in the room in his office as those decisions were being made.
We learned those lessons.
Yeah, but what I didn't realize, Joe, is I talked to these guys privately, because I didn't publicly criticize them. I felt like it was their time at bat.
Right.
But as I tried to share what we experienced, it was very clear to me that it was 18 years later, and they had to learn it for themselves.
They didn't want to hear.
But I will say this. You know, Colin Powell had one of his rules in his autobiography was when it's good, it's never as good as you think it is. And when it's bad, it's never as bad as you think it is, and you need to remember that. There's a silver lining in what happened. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish, but the silver lining is they laid down a marker that this was a bad law that did not work, that was bad for the American people. And over time, as they get the tactics right, that will redound to their benefit.
Tomorrow we'll face elections here in New York City, Virginia, New Jersey. Joe was talking right before you came on about what lessons might be drawn if the conventional thinking happens. Terry McAuliffe wins in Virginia, Chris Christie in New Jersey. Focus on Jersey in your three rules. Is Chris Christie, how does he rank? How does he fit with the three things you believe Republicans have to do? What do Republicans, lessons do they take from his race, rather, as it relates to those three things you laid out?
Well, I think Christie is an archetype of the gubernatorial wing of the party. I mean, what's interesting is, and people need to remember this, it's very hard, I would argue virtually impossible, to govern the country from Capitol Hill. The last time that happened was when Joe Cannon was Speaker early in the 20th century. I mean, even Newt couldn't really ultimately do that, and he was probably the most powerful Speaker since Cannon. So it looks messy, it looks ugly, and that's what's hurting the party. But if you turn to Christie and Walker in Wisconsin and Kasich in Ohio, and I could go on and on with the governors, they have the same principles. They have the same basic policies of limited government, lower taxes, more efficient government, and stronger families. Chris Christie's pro-life, he's pro-marriage, he's tried to cut income taxes, he's held the line on property taxes. But what it shows, Harold, is that candidates matter.
All right, Ralph, I don't know if you have time to stick around. We'd love to have you back on the set. Thank you so much for joining us.